Azim, Professor of Political Science. Dr. Abdel Azim, good afternoon to you, sir. Dr. Abdel Azim.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, sir. Dr. Abdel Azim, how do you see here the significance of the event, the first to be held in Egypt?
You know, this kind of conference really representing the role of Egypt and emphasize how it's, the vital rule of Egypt according to representing the major of all regions and world countries towards Egypt as one of the emphasized country to receiving and to really launching this kind of conferences and this kind of conference today and mostly of other conferences because the presenter schedule for the Egyptian present have a lot of conferences representing to cooperation and relationship between Egypt and other regional and all the international countries all over the world.
Yes. Sir, how would you describe Africa's needs for medical and health cooperation, especially after the coronavirus pandemic?
Since more than 2 weeks, the Prime Minister, Dr. Madbouli, did a conference, the international conference, representing how Egypt really dealing with the pandemic of COVID-19 and the Ukrainian crisis, and how does Egypt really make a crisis, emphasize crisis management line for dealing with this kind of problems all over the world. But this conference really today was this conference today is representing how Egypt can be receiving different kind of medical services and critical a very turning point for Europe and all the African countries. And precisely medical envisions that make a center for the healthcare in Africa too, and for the many international medical companies all over the world and hospitals to start to invest in Egyptian market for creating existing companies or launching for the African market too. So the mostly of comments coming to this conference to presenting how there is the Egypt state has made a great straight for the past few years and field of the drugs in industry and how is it the largest medical and pharmaceutical market in the Middle East and for Arab countries region too. So the mostly of Egyptian market as mostly you know that is how it's attracted of investment in this field, and it is kind of significant growth rates recently, mostly 12 percentages the positive effect of this COVID-19 pandemic recently.
Yes. Sir, how would you list Africa's health woes?
Excuse me, I cannot hear you very well.
How do you see here the challenges facing the African continent in the health sector?
For different kind of this comments coming here, this kind of conferences to presenting how it's resisted manufacturing and marketing technology and measures of breakthrough the field of medicines and in launching reputation of value of Egyptian medicine, market in all toward African market and Arab market too. So to enter the Arab region and those previous steps, as I just mentioned, to qualify the Egyptian and launch this kind of this conferences, it is kind of a catalyst of majorities of steps that we have to make an effort for Egyptian, the Egyptian state to this kind of drugs and pharmaceutical industries. But it's kind of one of goals of this conference of objectives to make integration and cooperation between African countries, switching needles that and opening a new market, as I just mentioned, and to ensure that is the arrival necessary for the modern medical products for African and Arab countries. In addition, all of those, there is a great need for increasing contributions of the all African content to health agenda, which ensuring this kind of quality accession to technology production and services with a high quality for healthcare toward all the African countries too.
Yeah.
So, this exception or this kind of course to provide participants from all different kind of Caribbean countries all over the world, and this deals with a new clients for during the fair and make a talks for the target country and direct accessation for customers, as I mentioned here.
Indeed. Addressing the conference, President Sisi expressed readiness to cooperate with all the African states in all fields and announced an initiative to provide 30 million coronavirus jabs to the African nations. How would you describe Cairo's Africa approach?
I think was this recent conference I just mentioned for Mr. Mazdouli, he emphasized about the rule of this collaboration between Egypt and all countries all over the world to dealing with coronavirus. But according to this kind of conference, this emphasized about this rule and to try to launching and unveiling new products and services during this conference to all the countries around us, and building a new partnerships with present all healthcare decision makers in the region, and make it communicate with healthcare leaders and decision makers. That is emphasized what is really rule of corporate and brand awareness rising the widely all perspective for all the countries, all the African region.
Yeah. Also, the president said that Egypt's water share is still at 55 million cubic meters, adding that the international standard programs and schemes are being implemented for water treatment. How do you read the statement by President Abdel al-Sisi?
According to the statement, representing we just many times really emphasize what is really the future for Egypt in region areas, especially for the African countries. Really, Mr. Abdel Sisi tried representing during his speech that is we have a new era of the world, and we have to make a new strategy for collaboration between all the countries, not just for a crisis period, but for all the countries. Even during this, even we're dealing with it during normally issues, not just for healthcare and this conference issue, but even for another issues which you need an African. And this kind of conference emphasized about the role of Egypt according to the Egyptian Agenda for Africa 2063. That is representing that is we have a new future. That is what is Mr. Abdel Sisi try to make like a new path for Egyptian collaboration investment toward Egypt, toward all African countries. Sorry, and that is what is as a conclusion of the speech, and I try to representing that not just for the conference speech today, but mostly of Mr. President speeches in international forums or occasions to try to presenting the similar images or vision from Egypt toward all African countries.
Yes. The president also said that the stability and security are the first steps for achieving development. How would you elaborate on this statement by President Abdel Sisi?
Mostly of talks between Egypt and Caribbean and Western countries depends on the mostly of speeches during the colonization era and towards what the future of relation between the countries, African countries and others, European with other European countries too. That is, this is statement representing the base of any stabilities in any region depends on all this kind of development and cooperation with economically aspect and with other issues relationship. So, Mr. Abdel Sisi was this statement to try to make a base of that. We cannot talk about the stability for African country, all African region, even all Arab region too, without talk about this kind of cooperation and support from the Caribbean countries towards the regions. That is, a kind of mutual relation. It's for the two sides of relation, not just for just African countries which needs this kind of support for technological or even economically support from the Arabian or Western countries.
Yes, indeed. Dr. Abdel Azim, also the conference is planned to serve as an annual meeting hub for the international companies in the medical field and in Africa. How is that important for both sides?
During mostly of the conferences, as I mentioned, it's trying to make a conclusion for the objectives of the relationship between the countries and what is the goals, or to make an agenda to implement or execute this kind of objectives for during this kind of conference. So what we are really looking for after it's done with is this kind of conference to find out or getting mechanism of implement the recommendations coming by this kind of conference, and we clearly could figure out what is really executive steps toward the cooperation and reality cooperation between African countries, and which need a necessity to cooperate, not just for COVID-19, by the way. We have more than 1,032 diseases inside African countries. It's like a pandemic. It could really like a catastrophe all the world. Okay, in a different kind with countries with a mostly poor level of needing to support and figure out this kind of to helping them. So it's as I just mentioned, it's not just the kind of conference or forum to just talk. We need to make a mechanism to implement that the steps of the objectives that we are looking for as all countries, all participants, all followers to this kind of conference, and Egypt, which is hosting this kind of conference as a rule, as a vital rule for Egyptian new state, as Mr. Abdel Fattah mentioned mostly of the time, as we are really believing it.
Indeed. Dr. Mohamed Abdel Azim, Professor of Political Science, thank you very much, sir, for your very precious input. Always a pleasure to have you with us. And our dear viewers, more about the conference in the following report.
Chairman of the Egyptian Authority for Unified Procurement, Medical Supply and Technology Management, AUPP, Bahe Zidan, said the first Africa Health Excon is a platform for dialogue among African states to exchange expertise and coordinate efforts with international companies to help drawing up solutions for health problems in Africa. He made the remarks on Sunday while addressing the three-day conference, which is held under the auspices of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. He noted that President el-Sisi directed to hold the